once in a while, we get a very special guest to come on the show. And this young lady is no exception. She's an author, an attorney, and a motivational speaker. She's done more work in the last 40 years than most people have done in a lifetime. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and my privilege to introduce to you Susan Omilian. Susan, how you doing?
I'm good. It's great to be here.
I hope I said your name right.
Close. Omilian, the $1 million that I don't have, but maybe I earned it over the lifetime. Who knows?
Now, to everybody who's not, to everybody who's watching this, we just did like 20 takes of the intro, and I'm not going to redo it again. So whatever She says her name is, that's her name.
Perfect.
Also, we got a very special guest. This lady's so important, I couldn't do this by myself. I had to go outside the box for this interview. He's a doctor and a motivational speaker and a professor. He's a close personal friend of mine, and ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor for him to help me out on this interview. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Gabriel Warren. Gabe, what's going on, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation, and welcome, Susan. It'll be glad to have a conversation with you today.
Thank you.
Now, Susan, let's go ahead and start from the top, 1970s. What made you get into the work to help women?
Well, maybe 1970 was before your time, but if you go back and remember some part of it, or maybe read the history of it, it was a time, early 70s, where it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. The revolution was on. And there's a lot of work being done around the country about human rights, civil rights, Martin Luther King, marches and protests, laws were being changed. And I really I was a college student in 1971. I think I graduated from college. Women's rights, women's libs. We were marching in the streets. Really just got me interested in it. I wanted to go to law school. I always wanted to go to law school, but I didn't know any women who were lawyers. I mean, women were not lawyers. If they were hidden away. So I got out of college. I spent a couple of years working as a journalist. Actually, I wrote the Women's News, which shows you how long ago that was, for a small local paper where I was living. I grew up in Michigan, and I went to law school, and I just got the idea that I wanted to, in fact, I started reading at the time. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was an attorney who was representing women and some men to fight for sex discrimination rulings that said that sex discrimination was against the Constitution. And I just got inspired by her and other people like her. So then I started doing some work on sexual assault, which was also something that there were no sexual assault centers. I started a sexual assault center in the Detroit area. And then when I came out of law school, I started representing women who were in domestic violence situations. And in Michigan in the early 80s, we had just passed the restraining order laws, which today are part of the normal course of business. Restraining orders, that there's been violence in a marriage or relationship, that there's a court order that must no longer go on, or there'll be a punishment. And it sort of went on from there, and started to really get into sex discrimination law, sexual harassment. Then I went to work for state government for a while here in Connecticut, where I live now, doing child welfare stuff. And it came up to late 90s when I had a personal tragedy in my life that really steered me to where I am today.
Now, starting off in the 1970s, all the things you mentioned that was going on in the 1970s, the civil rights movement, women's lib, why was working with women so important to you?
That's a good question. I think it was because I could see how myself personally, although I was fortunate to have an education, I got a lot of scholarships. My family is very blue collar, and pretty much so today still. I think it was that I had this need or this interest in doing meaningful work. And I saw what women's lives were like and how we were being held back. And I thought that was unfair. And I thought that the laws were changing and that somebody needed to enforce those laws. And to get a credential at law school, although my class in law school was only a third women, and every day we were, and probably many fewer people of color, both men and women, that every day we were sort of challenged, like, why are you here? Why are you taking some white man's position in law school? And so it was really clear that, this was discrimination. And unless we did something about it, it was not going to go away.
That's awesome. So now, Susan, you mentioned this a little bit in your first answer about Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm curious to know, what does the recent passing of her, what does that mean to you? How did that affect you? I know you said she inspired you to kind of do some of the things you've done over the course of your career. So can you tell us a little bit more about what her passing means to you?
Well, I don't think her passing means the end of the civil rights struggle in this country and this world, but I think she was she was an incredible advocate. She had a way of arguing things. For example, the cases she started to bring early on that she thought she could win is that she actually was bringing cases, but on the behalf of male plaintiffs who were discriminated against because of their sex. And so the court had to look at it, not just as, oh, this woman wants something and men are going to be taken away, but this man didn't get something because of the way we narrowly defined how the roles of men and women. So I thought she was just brilliant at that kind of argument. And I also think that she was able to articulate the larger goal is that we are trying to achieve across all races and classes and cultures, some kind of equality, or at least consideration of people as human beings. I don't think this work will die with her, but we've lost a huge champion at a very high level of our government that continued even when she wasn't winning the cases. People talk about her dissents, her dissenting opinions, where she'd write something after she lost the case, all the other judges went against her, or many of them went against her. She'd write her opinion anyways. And some of that articulation and argument will be used in the future to do the right thing. So I think that's what people like her, they've laid down the tracks, like Martin Luther King did, and Mahatma Gandhi, laying down the tracks of people thinking the way we wanted to get our society to look ideally.
That's good. So now you mentioned also that you had a personal tragedy that happened, and you were faced with some adversity early on. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about that, like what happened, and kind of share a little bit of that story?
So I had, as I mentioned, I had done a lot of work up until this is in October of 1999, 21 years ago this month. My niece. She was a 19-year-old college student at a very good college in Michigan, Kalamazoo College, and she was with a boy for a short period of time. She broke up with him. He did not accept the end of the relationship. He had never physically assaulted her. There were some things that were going on in that relationship that she did not accept or felt he was not going to change about the way that they interacted, and how he was moving the relationship too far, too fast is probably the best way to describe it. So, and she didn't know he had a gun. So he killed her in his dorm room and killed himself. And the significance of that obviously was just horror, because she's a very bright, very beautiful, very talented young woman who wanted to become a lawyer. And like me, she always talked about my cases. She wanted to help people. I think what was hard for me, beside the shock and horror of it, that someone so dearly loved was harmed in that way and killed, is that I thought my family was the other. I thought that that would never happen to my family. I don't know why exactly I thought that. But there was always, this is a problem that I could help other people solve, but it was never going to touch me. And I think what I learned from that, beside, like I said, the horror of it, is two things. One is that it does happen across all cultures and races and socioeconomic geographical areas, and that this is a problem we really have to solve. And secondly, that it switched the work I did. I no longer could do the crisis intervention work I was doing with people as a lawyer, and so I had to go to a different kind of work. It was really healing work for me that I needed. I wanted to do more than survive what happened to Maggie, and I think that I knew that she would want me to do that. And so, but I realized that in the moment of her death is when she understood what was happening, that she wasn't going to survive, that I wanted to help women who did survive to actually move on, as Maggie could not. And so I devised this workshop and some materials that I have developed into my books that really helps women take that journey from victim to survivor to thriver. And that's really what I've been developing, is what is a thriver and how do we get there? And how do we raise not only women, because I've also started working with male offenders and men who've gone through trauma, but we all need to get to that place beyond the adversity that's happened to us. We're all going to have a struggle in our life. The question is, what are we going to do with it? And how do we get to a better place in spite of it?
You spoke about Maggie briefly, but can you tell us a little bit more about this young lady and how special she was?
Well, if you go to my website, you can see a picture of her because she really was beautiful. My website is thriverzone.com. And there's a video up there on the homepage that I produced or got done. It's a very short video, and it talks about her life and shows pictures of her. She was one of those kids that was kind of just phenomenal. I mean, she played music, she played the piano, she was a basketball player. She had a very large circle of friends. They saw her as a problem solver, somebody they could call in the middle of the night and she'd help them talk through a problem. She was very, very bright. She carried 4.0 grades. She wanted to be a lawyer or a medical researcher. She was the whole package. And I think the one thing that the reason why she didn't perceive that she was in as much danger as she was is that she was a problem solver and she tried to solve this problem all by herself. And this man was very manipulative. He manipulated her to come to his room that night by herself. And of course, she didn't know he had a gun. And so that's that manipulation. She was just being kind to him. And that in that moment, when it all came together, there was no place for her to go. There's no place for her to escape. So as I said before, I wanted to give that moment. Her spirit is so strong that I wanted to inspire other women. And I think I have been able to do that. One of the things I've used in my work is the idea that living well is the best revenge. This man killed himself after he killed Maggie. So we didn't have a trial and go to court and find him guilty and throw him in jail, all that kind of stuff, which is difficult to go through as a survivor of homicide, as I've learned from other people. But I think living well is what I wanted to do as my best revenge. And I sort of inspired other women to say, yeah, I'm never going to get back at that guy that hurt me or my parents that abused me as children, but I'm going to show them that I'm going to, in spite of all that, I'm going to succeed. I'm going to find that place. I'm going to find a life of purpose. I'm going to live positively, and I'm going to be a role model for other people to show them that they too can get beyond adversity, whatever that adversity and trauma is.
Well, you definitely are a role model. When I read your story, I definitely wanted to have you on as a guest.
Well, thank you.
My problem with that answer is real simple. Everybody goes through tragedy, but I don't think I personally know for a fact I'm not as strong as you are. Like if a tragedy hit me, even though I know life will go on, and I have to live my life, it's always going to be there. It's always going to hurt. So what would your advice be to someone who has dealt with tragedy just like you did?
I think in looking not only at my situation, this is 20 years ago, Maggie was killed about 5 or 6 months after the Columbine shooting, which was one of the first major, or at least the more publicized school shootings. Since then, of course, there's been many, many, many. I think that what I've learned, and I had a lot of mentors along the way, people who were also homicide survivors who helped me, and what they told me, and I think this is true. You need to find some kind of purpose out of all this. You need to find something good to come out of this. And for some of us, it took me about a year to be able to come and to come through the grief of it and the chaos of it in my family and in the world that of Maggie's schools and school friends and her family and the people that I knew. But I look at the Parkland kids, the high school students that were in that terrible tragedy. I think it's now about a year ago. Those kids pretty quickly picked up that they were going to do something good about this, that they had literally watched their friends die right in front of them. And yet they had the sense that, yes, in this grief, we're going to find something that's purposeful. And they got on, they were out there very, very early on talking about not only their grief, but talking about we need to make changes. And they went to the Florida legislature and got changes in the gun laws. They're out right now doing voter education and voter registration during this election. So I think to find some kind of purpose, something positive, and I've talked to a lot of survivors, particularly of homicide, particularly parents who've lost their daughters or their children very violently and very, very horribly. And that's what I tell them. You know, you've got to find something, even if it's just starting a little charity, and maybe your daughter who was killed loved to dance. Well, let's do something with the dance troupe. Just something, because otherwise but we all have tragedy in our life. We're all going to struggle in our life. You guys could tell me some of your struggles. And the question is, how did we are a resilient human race. And the only question is, how do you turn not to what happened to you, but how to react to it? And the more positive you can be about it, and boy, that's hard some days, because I still miss Maggie. I still expect her to come walking in the door at our Christmas party with my family, and she's not going to do that. But then I realized that I've been able to help other women because of Maggie's story. So I have to go there. I have to stay there. I got to stay there.
That's awesome. So Susan, so you're an author, a speaker, and thriver.
Yep.
As what you have on your website, which I like that.
That's
especially
me, yep.
The last part about being a thriver. And you've created Thriver Zone.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit about what is that? Like, what's the mission? And what do you do with Thriver Zone?
Okay, so it's sort of like somebody said to me, it's like, what are you doing? And like, you have to have a name for your website. And like, okay, Thriver Zone. No, it was so I think what I learned in this process, not that I didn't know this before, but it was much clearer after Maggie's death, is that we're all on a journey. We're all going to have a struggle. We're all going to have some kind of transformational moment when we say either it's going to take us down or it's going to take us forward, and that we want to get to our, what I call the happy ending. I love fairy tales, the happy ending, the place where we do think, I think what's important in my happy ending, the thing that makes me happy is that when I can do meaningful work. I've always wanted to accomplish something. It's why I went to law school, I guess. And I've always wanted to help and heal people. So when I do things that hit that goal, that feels like my thriver. Right now, I feel like I'm my thriver energy. I'm not here as a victim. I'm not even here just as a survivor. I'm here talking about the things that will make other people's lives positive. So it's feeding what's important to me. And so when I present that to the women, they're like, oh, well, no one ever told me I was on a journey. I thought I've been a victim my whole life. They'll tell me things like, I'm a great survivor. I can survive anything. Well, that's admirable. That's good. But you want to take that energy and push it out. Let's see if we can get you to a different place. So I have this working definition of a thriver. I call it a working definition because I think that we haven't really defined this yet. I mean, I don't think we've made it big enough yet. And the idea that we haven't made it big enough means that we really haven't challenged people that, to not get stuck in their stuff, as people would say it, but to really see that they can make their life better, not only for themselves, but also for their children and for their family. So I think a thriver is a happy, I'm reading from my book, just so you know, here it is. A happy, self-confident, and productive individual who believes she, and it could be a he, she has a prosperous life ahead of her. She's primed to follow her dreams, go back to school, find a new job, start her own business, or write her story. She believes in herself and her future so much she will not return to an abusive relationship. She is not stuck in her anger or need for revenge. Living well is her best revenge. She's found a network of women who understand and share her desire to move forward after abuse or trauma or any kind of adversity. And I think we're getting clearer as a society that there is that journey. But for a lot of women that come to my workshop or read my books, like, no one ever told me there was like something beyond all this. I want to get there. And so then we become role models for each other. And I think, as you know, Gabriel, that kids need, we all need role models. We need to see that there's somebody who's going to push us a little bit, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg was for me when I was in law school. Oh, I could be that too, or I could be close to that, or look what she achieved, and I'm going to try for something like that. Wow. And so that's what thriver means to me. And I want women to live in that thriver zone. My work helps them enter the thriver zone, to start seeing what their possibilities are. I help them stay there and start to get their desires moving forward, their dreams that they want to go back to school or paint or play music, and then finally to live there. I want to live here more than I don't live here. And when I go back to that negative, and I can go back there some days, you know, when I think about Maggie, or I hear, you know, a terrible story, or COVID's like that these days, hear these terrible, tragic stories, but you want to keep pushing it out to be positive.
That's really good. So now you go out and you speak, you know, around the country, and you talk to audiences all about your story. But can you give us a little bit more of an idea of what can audiences expect when when you're invited to speak? Do you normally just talk about your story? Do you talk about trying to help women predominantly to get through domestic violence, or kind of what's your overall message when you go out and speak?
So my message is, I do talk about Maggie's story because a story gets people interested, and they want to tell me how sad that is or whatever, but they also get inspired by it. My message is that we can do more than survive anything that's happened to us. And the path that we can be on to thrive is really an open path. I have found that although I've been doing this work mostly with women who come through domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, I don't ask them to tell me their story when they come to my workshop, but I've developed a series of exercises that can apply outside of that arena. My books have all that material in it. When I go out and speak, I try to get people to see that they are also on a journey, and this material can help them. I have recently been speaking not only to audiences that deal with domestic violence and sexual assault and some of the general areas that women and men who are in the helping professions are in, but I've also started doing some work at men's prisons. I have been working since Maggie was killed with domestic violence offenders, which is intervention programs, men who are arrested for domestic violence. Usually it's a combination of an anger management program and a domestic violence 101 program, really helping them to see, and a lot of them have trauma histories. So it's not just what they've done, which is a bad thing as an offender, but when they start talking about their childhoods or the kind of life that they're living, a lot of trauma history. When I go to men's prisons, a vast number of the men who are in prison that I talk to have either killed their partner or wife at some point in their life, and they're there for the rest of their lives. But when you start asking about their trauma history or where they would like to go and do something positive, they in fact have brought me in as something positive they could do. Yeah, they're not going to leave they're staying there for the rest of their life probably because of their sentence for murder or manslaughter or whatever, but they're trying to help the guys that are coming in and out to understand about domestic violence and maybe make some changes. So I think as a society, we're looking at the impacts of trauma and this journey from victim to survivor to thriver across many, many populations. maybe getting more articulate about that journey so we can actually help people to make it faster and to stay in that thriver place and not keep going back to victim.
Susan, I got 2 more questions for you. Judge Barrett just got appointed to the Supreme Court. As a woman, what kind of work do you want to see her do in that position that she's in right now?
Well, that's a really good question. It's the question that's been being asked across the country and the world. I think first of all, it's important that she's a woman. She's only the 5th woman, I think, who's been on the court. And so that's to be celebrated. She's also a very bright woman, as far as I can tell, and she has something that she wants to accomplish. I think what I'd like to see is for her and the court in general, not push back on some of the things that we have accomplished in this country, and particularly the way that the Constitution, remember, this is another thing from my Women's Lib 1970s, we tried to pass the Equal Rights Amendment in the 1970s. We almost got there. I think we were like 2 states that we couldn't ratify. And that means that women are not in the Constitution right now. It still says men. All men are created equal. It talks about, although the 14th Amendment gives us some rights as a minority, women are the majority in this country. They have been for centuries, probably. And I don't want to see our rights or our ability to go forward as equal people, equal partners. And that means that to uphold that, I don't know, Justice Barrett did not give a lot of information in her hearings about exactly where she is on some of those issues. I cannot believe that she came through law school and where she was practicing law without some discrimination against her as a woman, certainly probably less than in my generation. So I want to see her step up and defend the rights of women, minorities, lesbian and gay, same-sex marriage. I think we've made some progress in this country to get to that equal place. That is my agenda. But I think it's been a broader agenda, and not just Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but a number of justices and senators and presidents who've really, really pushed this forward. So I'm hoping that she will see that as what the Constitution means, and that she will apply that.
Last question. Mm-hmm. What do you think Maggie's legacy would be? And with that said, what do you think your legacy would be when it's all said and done?
That's an interesting question too. You got some good questions there. I think Maggie's legacy has already been established. I mean, just from the women that I have worked with, and when I do tell her story or I show the video that's on my website about her, people really kind of, it's a way that you can get people to understand that it can happen to anybody, that this is something that we need to address in our country, in our world. And I think it's about, despite the fact that she has physically died, that her spirit still lives on. And I think that's what inspires all of us. My legacy, I don't know. People always ask me this because I'm never a person that likes to be praised. That's not what that gets me going. What gets me going was I see people's life change because of something that I did or something I wrote. The best way you can get me is to call me up and say, I read your book and I really like this part. Moving people. I mean, this is what this is all about. Otherwise, why are we doing this? I know I won't make $1 million in my lifetime doing this work, but that's never been something that's been important to me. I mean, I like to live comfortably, and I have a nice place to live, and I have, a good life, but it's much more important. I think we're here to help each other. And if we don't do that, then we don't have any kind of legacy at all, whether we're famous or not.
Well, I for one hope that I make $1 million in my lifetime.
Well, just do good with it. That's fine. And you can give some to me and I'll give it to the women. I don't know.
Susan, I promise you, It's the reason why the board has not gave me $1 million. It's because I'm not going to do good with it.
Well, let's just get your life together here, and then we can, get that desire, and it'll come to you. Yes, you never know.
So Susan, I have a couple more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So you've written a book series called the Thriver Zone series, and
Yep.
I see one of them is Entering the Thriver Zone, which was written in 2016, and then Staying in the Thriver Zone, which was written in 2018, and then this year you wrote Living in the Thriver Zone.
Yep.
So can you, I guess, kind of give us a little bit of a synopsis of what the series seeks to accomplish when you're thinking about all three of the books? If someone read those three books, what would you want them to walk away from it with taking?
Well, I purposely named them that because I wanted it to be a progression on this journey. So entering the Thriver Zone, really, I have exercises. They're writing exercises. They're interactive. They're worksheets. People can use. I've used them in the workshops, and I put them into a book with some of the samples of the women who were in my workshop of what they wrote. The 7 steps to thriving is in entering. That's entering into it, seeing your journey, quieting your negative voice in your head, bringing up the happy person inside, and really starting to work on your desires and moving forward with those and setting new goals for yourself. That's really entering the Thriver Zone. You start to see the possibility for your life. Staying in the Thriver Zone really starts to get people to work on specific desires and start to work on overcoming your fear. We have these negative voices in our head, limiting beliefs about ourselves. Oh, I don't deserve that. I can't do that. How do you break through that? And to really find the real you. To me, that's about meaningful work. And so staying there means that you're not only going to stay there, but you're going to start to really develop yourself and your Thriver goals and get some of them accomplished. Living in the Thriver Zone is really a book that I wrote with, I interviewed 7 of the women that came through my workshop over the last 20 years. And I asked them, what was this journey like for you? Where did you start from the beginning? What exercises, what did we do in the workshops or in our follow-up groups every month? What helped you to keep moving? And how do you see yourself today? And I love those interviews. They're very articulate. They're doing amazing things. And they're, once again, role models for other women. And I wanted to document that. I wanted to show people that's where you can get. Now, you may not do exactly what these women are doing. One of them's going to school to become a nurse. One of them is a social worker. She just passed her licensing test. So it may not be what you're going to do, but just getting that energy moving and to document what living well means. As your best revenge. And that's really the series and how I tried to do it. The other books that I have are novels. I always wanted to write a novel, so I wrote this novel. It's loosely based on Maggie's story, and I tried to use Maggie's story not only as a story about moving forward and thriving, even if you're physically not here anymore, but it was also to try to show the warning signs that Maggie missed and to use it as a lot of people learn more from a story than they do from a textbook. So that's what I really tried to do with those books. I've always been a writer, so it's not unusual that I started writing, but it was really important for me to get this work out into a broader audience, and that's one way I could do it.
Wow, that's awesome. Before I ask my last question, I will tell you, I was looking and I noticed that, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And just, I guess a fun fact about me is about 10 years ago now, I used to work for an organization that partnered with a domestic violence charity locally. I used to live in Alabama. And one of the things that we did as a part of October was we used to do Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, which was where all these individuals, mainly it was guys, would walk a mile in some red high heel shoes. And
boy, that's an experience.
Yes, and I actually did that one year, and by the time I got to the end, I was almost in tears because, we were walking in the street, and just having that small experience, I got a chance to just know somewhat what it was like walking in the shoes of those women who have faced domestic violence and the importance of, being able to support and stand up for
Gabriel.
people who can't stand for themselves.
Gabriel, that wasn't for domestic violence. That was a prank.
Well, I've never worn those kind of shoes because I know how difficult it is to walk in those shoes.
Yeah. So thank you for being able to share your story, because there are a lot of people out here who needs to hear that it is life possible afterwards. So that leads to my last question is, for the people who have faced trauma or faced some type of adversity, and, yours was, domestic violence on behalf of your niece. But there may be people who are, facing all kinds of things, health challenges, financial challenges, whatever it is. What advice would you give them on how they can, pick up the pieces and move forward and live a productive life as you have so many years after that event that happened?
I think what's universal about all those experiences, and like I said, not only with women who are victims of domestic violence, but also offenders of domestic violence, but anybody who's faced adversity. We see it now with the COVID survivors and hopefully thrivers, breast cancer survivors. This is also October's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I think it's acknowledging and understanding that you are on a journey and you will get beyond it. It's not going to happen maybe every day, and it's not going to happen quickly. Although the Parkland kids showed us that there's a movement there, that you can move through it, at least parts of it, pretty quickly, or at least understand that that's what you need to do. Finding some kind of purpose, understanding it's not just you. For a long time, and one of the things in the women's liberation movement that I learned is that the personal is in fact political. There's a larger goal here, and it's not just happening to you. So don't get stuck in blaming yourself. I mean, I can do that. I have some guilt about what happened to Maggie. I should have tried to help her. I should have been there for her. I should have known more. I should have done something. But that's not where I stay most days, because it's not the most productive place. And I know that's not where she would want me to be. But I think it's finding a place where something good can come out of this, and finding a place where you can do something meaningful and not get stuck in that. Not that you're not going to go back there some days. October is hard for me. This is the month Maggie was killed. Maggie and I share the same birth date in August. That's a hard day for me. But most of the other days, particularly in the women that I work with, get inspired by her story. Those are good days. And one of the things that we talk about in my family is there are good days still. And those are the days we celebrate.
Well, today I'm going to celebrate, because not only did I have one amazing person on my show, I had two amazing people on my show. And ladies and gentlemen, Susan, do you have anything that you want to plug or anything that you want to tell the audience?
I just wanted to let people know that you can get some more information about me and about the work I do at my website, which is thriverzone.com. I have started doing the workshops, a 2-day workshop for women virtually. So I started to work outside of Connecticut, actually. So if you're interested, there's some postings up on the website. And most importantly, just find that space where you can live free and live in peace. And you can be a thriver too.
That's awesome, man. Gabriel, you're not a rookie to this. You was on my show a couple months back, so you know what to do. Got anything you want to plug? Oh, by the way, if you haven't seen Gabriel's interview, it was one of my first interviews. It was about the fifth one. And you can see how rusty I was compared to how I am now. But if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. Gabe, you got anything you want to plug?
Yeah, you can always, find out more about me. My website is drgabrielwarren.com. And then also you can follow me on any social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the hashtag is for at Dr. Gabriel Warren. So I look forward to just, being able to just share with everyone. And I also have a podcast that comes out every 2 weeks and is centered around, similar things, living beyond, how you're able to live life beyond what you do every day. So I'm just looking forward to just really working with Joey and interviewing more and more people, because I think this platform is going to be really inspiring to help people deal with overcoming adversity and how to keep moving forward.
Well, that's something we're going to talk about later. I wasn't really going to talk about that just yet. But yes, what Gabe is referring to, we're going to try to do something special, but it's in the works with someone else, and we also got somebody else involved. So we're not going to just talk about it just now. But one last question, Gabe, where can you find your podcast?
Anywhere podcasts are available. So Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere. Just type in Living Beyond Podcast and it'll pull up.
Gabe, I want to say thank you for helping me out in this interview, because Susan, you're one of the most amazing women I ever had an opportunity to talk to. Sincerely, you're an amazing woman, and I thank you humbly for coming on my show.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I'm just impressed. This is one of my first podcasts that I'm doing, so I'm fascinated by what's out there, and people are really interested in these great topics. So this is so important. This is what people need to hear. So Gabriel, keep doing it. It's important.
Yes,
well,
thank you, Susan.
I think it's more your story. Your story is very inspiring. I don't even think that we really touched, everything that we needed to touch on. But hopefully maybe one day you'll come back and Gabe will help me out, because this is some stuff that I shouldn't do, because I'm a clown. I'm funny. Ha ha he he. So I need somebody like Gabriel to help me out. And it's just like, hey, Joey, we need mature. We need somebody that's mature.
You asked really good questions. Don't sell yourself short. Those were.
I wasn't selling myself short. I know I'm very good at everything I do. But what I'm trying to say, is, I needed somebody like Dr. Warren to come on and, put that those very good questions out there. But Gabriel, I want to say thank you once again for coming on. Susan, thank you very much for coming on. To everybody watching, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, it'll help me out a lot. So subscribe and hit that like button. Susan, stay online. Gabe, stay online. Everybody else, see you next Sunday. You've done some fantastic work in women's with women's white with women's rights. Okay, so see, I knew I was gonna mess it up. I'm sleeping, bro. Hey, Gabe, I should focus. All right, so every once in a while we get a very important guest who does a lot of good work. This young lady has done amazing work for the last 40 years. She's an author, motivational speaker, and attorney. She's done a lot of work for the women in her community, but also all over the country. And in 1999, that her inspiration really. Gabe, you want to do the intro?
You were doing good. That was good.
Yeah, I think you got it. Thank you.
Okay. There should be a blooper section. And I got a degree in the communications industry. All right. Every once in a while, we get a very important guest to come on the show. And this young lady has... Every once in a while, we get a very important guest to come on the show. But this young lady has done more work in the last 40 years than most people have done in a lifetime. She's an author, motivational speaker, and attorney. She's wrote numerous books. And today, she's here to tell her side. Golly! I'm going to keep it short. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, Susan. I'm sleeping, bruh.